If I was the man in charge, he'd be looking for another job right now. You know, I wouldn't want that on my team. This is taking something away from the team. You know, now we've got to play so-and-so and so-and-so, and all we're hearing about is this and this and this.
Distraction.
And it takes away from everybody else on the team.
All right, so that was Bobby Knight telling our Maria Bartiromo, whatever you think of Colin Kaepernick's stance on sitting out, kneeling out the national anthem, it's a distraction to what he should be doing and what the team should be doing, focusing on the game. The co-host of Fox Sports 1's Skip and Shannon, Undisputed, Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe. And Shannon, I got a chance to hear your comments on this, in which you argued that years from now people will appreciate more than they do now what Kaepernick is doing. You heard what Bobby Knight was saying, Shannon. What do you think of that, that right now he's a distraction?
Well, Coach Knight should know a thing or two about distractions because he was a distraction at the University of Indiana. He threw a chair on the floor. He choked his players. He was constantly screaming and yelling, and eventually Indiana got tired of him being a distraction after he choked a student in the grocery store, and they got rid of him. So he should understand full well what a distraction is. I think Colin Kaepernick got the ball rolling. Once we got past whether he was kneeling or sitting, once we got past the flag, once we got past the anthem, and he started laying out what he was protesting, he started the conversation. Now, there are going to be a lot of people that won't like his stance. They'll still continue to make it about the flag. They'll still make it about the anthem. But he's trying to draw attention to the police brutality in the African-American communities and how minorities are treated unfairly in a lot of instances in our society.
Now, you had mentioned in your conversation, it was actually pretty riveting TV, where originally, you know, Rosa Parks wasn't thought of very highly, ditto Martin Luther King, even within their respective communities and outside. And then it took some time. But a lot of folks got back and said, all right, I know Martin Luther King. I praise Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a colleague and friend of mine, and Kaepernick is no Martin Luther King. You say what? But
they didn't say that at the time. If you think about it, Neil,
but you're not putting him in their company, right?
A show occasionally. They quote Dr. King so much 40 years after, almost 50 years after his passing, when no one quoted him when he was alive. So history looks fondly back on Dr. King. It looks fondly back on Muhammad Ali and Rosa Parks and some of these iconic figures that stood up for social injustice. But at the time of them doing it, no one thought very highly of them. And as you mentioned, some in their own community didn't think very fondly of these figures. So time will tell. History will be the judge of how we look back on Colin Kaepernick.
You know, do you think, though, that, you know, the cynics will look at it, oh, he's a backup quarterback. I think you would mention that and all. This might have been a contract ploy. It's gotten him a lot of media attention. As I said, he's on the cover of Time. What do you make of that?
I think that's what makes it more amazing, Neil, is that he is a backup quarterback. He's one step away from being out of the league. If this was Cam Newton or Russell Wilson, no one would bat an eye because they know these players aren't going anywhere. But here's a backup quarterback.
Yeah, so, but it does make it less likely for someone to fire him for fear that it would be looked at that he was fired for whatever this move was, right?
Nah, you know, because the NFL doesn't work like that. They get rid of players every year. There's always turnover, so they could always say, well, he's not playing well. And you can look at it over the last couple of years, he hasn't played well, basically since he took his team to the Super Bowl. So I don't think teams would use that against him for one of the reasons why the 49ers let him go, or for maybe a reason. If you can play football, that's what the NFL is about. It's about production and tolerance.
I think you're right about that, because
so is your tolerance.
Yeah, many loathsome player, if they're great, the people look the other way. But it's interesting in this.
That's why any walk of life. It's just not in sports. There's a lot of going that in all walks of business. If you can perform well, they'll keep you on.
No, you're absolutely right about that. But this poll, I mean, it kind of gets back to what you were saying at the outset, John, that he's a controversial figure. That might change, but right now he's considered one of the most disliked players in the NFL. So we're told that a lot of teammates bristle at him and think he's trying to be a notice box here. Others have argued, look, this is only getting African-American players involved, no white players involved. What do you think of that?
Well, in order for it to really gain traction, you're going to have to cross over, because right now it's just basically minorities. You saw African Americans and you saw Megan Rapinoe, who's a member of the LGBT community. But for the civil rights movement to take traction, it really had to get our white counterparts on board. Right. And I think for this thing to really get legs and to get meaning behind it, it's going to need a figure. It's going to need some prominent figures, maybe a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, maybe a Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, or maybe a Phil Knight. It's going to have to be something more than minorities in order for them, because if it's just minorities, people are like, well, I don't really know. Maybe they're embellishing it. But if some of the other side get on and can open their minds and open their hearts and show compassion and say, you know what? I can see this. It's not in their imagination. It's not. This is reality. I can see why they feel this way, because I know I get treated differently because of the complexion of my skin. I know I get treated because I'm a white male in America. And so if the movement can get traction, if we can get a few prominent white Americans, that would be great for the cause.
But let me answer then. Politicians have failed to keep the calm. It's calmer than it was in Charlotte. And I've often suggested that maybe it needs guys like you, Kaepernick, maybe to go down there and urge calm. People have the right to protest. Some of these protests, I think it's fair to say, gotten out of hand. But do you, when you see people looting and burning police vehicles, burning other vehicles, people getting shot in crowds, what do you say? What do you tell people? If you were down there, what would you tell them? It makes me,
I'm disappointed, because now you're allowing the narrative to be changed to peaceful protests and to have people look at the plight of what's going on in our communities. You know, and I made the analogy today, it's like a party, Neil. You go to a party and everything's going good, and then a few bad apples come and they ruin the entire night. It was 4 hours of great dancing and everybody having a good time, and then a few bad apples come in, and then all they're talking about, they're not talking about the previous 4 hours that we were dancing and having a great time.
Right.
All anyone wants to talk about is the last, 30 minutes of the party that was ruined, and we had to go home early. And that's what happened. You had some people that had well and good intentions get infiltrated by people that were up to no good. And they used this opportunity to do probably what they would normally do, which is loot, which is steal, which is cause problems. And those do not represent the vast majority of the good people that's trying to do the right thing. Exactly.
Then let me ask you finally, your views. But your view, Sean, I'm sorry, we're tight for time here, but
no, go ahead.
Did you get any heat for the comments you made, the Kaepernick comments you made? Did people at either Fox Sports or something roll their eyes and say, "Oh God, this is going to get us in a lot of heat"?
No, because they knew what they were getting when they signed me on. They knew I was going to. I'm going to be 100%. And here's the thing, Neil. If you worry about whether you're liked or disliked, you'll be a very unhappy person for the majority of your life. You have to say what you honestly, truly feel, what's in your heart, what's in your conscience. And you can't worry about, because if I worry about what's on the left, if I worry about what's on the right, the one thing that's hurting in the middle is me.
Well put. Sean, it would be tough to argue with you in person, because, well, you could beat me up. But kind of very good.
I'm really a nice guy, Neil. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. You got to watch Fox Sports 1's Skip and Shannon Undisputed. He lays it out there. Whether you agree or disagree, there's no milquetoast, middle of the road stuff. It's out there.